with Brenda, who is going to have a consultation. So Brenda, you were saying that you are in commercial real estate.
Yes, I am.
And whereabouts?
Sacramento region, California.
Is real estate busy up there this time of year?
It is now. It's picking up. The market's really improving. So,
well, in California, the market has been very brisk.
Yes.
As I understand it.
Yes, yes.
And you have a family?
I do. I do. I have 5 girls altogether, daughters, and 6 grandchildren and 1 on the way.
Okay. Well, good for you.
Yes, thank you.
So, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Skin questions?
Not at all.
If there was something you could change or improve about your skin, what would it be?
Probably it's sagging more than anything, particularly in the eye area, neck. Just everything.
Okay, and anything else that you'd like to change or improve?
My eyelashes are a lot thinner than they used to be. And I do have some like whiteheads occasionally under here that get really hard. And I pick, I shouldn't, but I do. And under the chin area, you know, all of this and all of this.
Okay, anything else?
Some dryness I do get. I do try to drink a lot of water and hydrate. And try to use a moisturizer. I don't know if it's the right one, but I do that pretty regularly. But I do it gets really kind of dry, patchy occasionally.
And are you happy with the texture of your skin? Do you like your pore size? Do you have any?
I would prefer to have smaller pores, yes.
And what about the uniformity, coloration?
I was just going to say I do not use sunscreen all the time because I just don't like the way they smell, most of them. I do have one in the SPH, I think 30, in some of the foundation I use, but that's something that, and I grew up in Santa Barbara, so in the sun a lot, so there's definitely sun damage.
So you do have some freckling or discoloration?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Do you think your skin overall is more normal, combination, dry? How do you categorize it?
Probably combination.
Okay. So where do you think that you are more on the oily side?
It would be more so right in here, I believe.
Kind of the T-zone?
Yeah, the outside's more.
Does it get
drier.
really shiny? Do you have to blot? Or is it something that's just very minimal?
I would say it's minimal.
Okay, so you're kind of more on the normals, maybe slightly oily in the T-zone?
Yes.
Were you ever a smoker?
No.
Now, I know you said you had quite a bit of sun exposure, but were you a sunbather?
Yes, but yes, I am. Was
And
not now, but
okay.
but I was as a teenager.
As a teenager, okay.
And early and in my 20s,
okay.
I would say, and probably early 30s, and then I kind of stopped it for the most part.
All right. So when you talk about sagging in the eye area, kind of point to what you mean.
Well, it's all of this. I don't have the under the eye so badly, but I don't know. It's just all of this. It's puffy, and
so we call that kind of the malar under eye area.
Yes.
Orbital. And when you talk about, you said sagging eye area and you said neck. So talk about what you mean by the neck area.
Well, just this. So I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. The elasticity, of course, is not like it used to be.
Okay. And when you mentioned the whiteheads under the chin, and you say you pick at it, do you ever get anything out?
No. Sometimes I do. I mean, if I really dig, or if I let it come more to the surface, yeah, once in a while.
Now, the reason I ask is because sometimes people get something that's called milia. Milia sits kind of on the surface of the skin, and it can look like a little pearly, almost like a whitehead, and they look like you could just get at them and get something out, but you can dig and nothing comes out. Usually they have to be extracted, and when they're extracted, it's almost like a little hard seed-like substance, and it's actually a cornification of the sweat duct. The tendency toward them can be hereditary, and also sun exposure, cumulative sun exposure, can tend to exacerbate that. So that's why I was asking, did you get anything out? If it's actually some type of a closed comedonal acne, a whitehead, something like that. Okay, so you are able to extract something. Did you ever have acne as a teenager?
No, not acne. I had breakouts, but not, I would say they probably, I did actually take, what is that common medication? Not the one that you can't take anymore, that's outlawed. Not Accutane, but...
Well, Accutane hasn't been outlawed.
Oh, okay.
But
I heard it was, but...
no, Accutane is still around.
Okay.
So it was an oral tetracycline?
Yes.
Okay, so you took an
Yes.
antibiotic.
I did take an antibiotic when I
okay.
was probably 17 through 23, and then I stopped it, and it wasn't a bad breakout, but it bothered me. And then it just, I didn't really have issues too much after that as I grew up, matured.
Do you remember how long you took the tetracycline?
It was probably about 7 years.
A long time.
I was, yes.
Usually they have you take tetracycline. Usually antibiotics today are taken for a short period of time to kind of get to the skin to a point where it can be treated topically and it's not quite as reactive. So just for our audience edification, when you have a breakout, any kind of breakout is acne. You could have a breakout that's very mild. You could have a breakout that is aggressive, more acute, but any kind of breakout is acne. Some people just break out once in a while. Some people have very mild acne. Some people just have acne very occasionally, but it's all acne. So you kind of had some moderate acne because they did give you an antibiotic. Okay. Yes. And then you stopped taking the tetracycline and your skin pretty much cleared up at that point?
It did. It did. It just changed.
So you how old were you when you started taking it? Do you remember?
I want to say it was probably 17. Just trying to remember where I lived then. I think it was 17.
So 17 till you were 24? Okay. So let me ask you, what do you use in the morning? What do you wash with?
I don't really wash. I take a cotton pad and I put like a witch hazel, some essential oil thing I made just to, just wipe off the face. I usually do all the cleansing at night.
Okay, and then what do you do after you use the cotton pad and the witch hazel and the essential oil?
I've been using mainly just Strivectin as a moisturizer for a long time.
Which Strivectin product?
The one that's pink and white. It's just the...
Is it the one they used to call better than Botox?
Yes.
Kind of a lotion?
It's a cream,
Okay.
like in a tube. They have other products I've tried, but that's predominantly the one I've used.
Okay. And what do you do after that? Anything?
No. Just
So no
makeup.
sunscreen?
No, only the makeup.
So there's something in your makeup. What kind of makeup do you wear?
Well, that depends. What is the last one? It's a better brand. BB. It's a BB cream, and I just got it on Amazon.
Okay. And do you know what the SPF factor that it claims?
Yes, about 30, I believe.
Okay. So just so you know, the sunscreen monograph has changed, and makeups are not broad spectrum. They're not allowed to claim that any longer. So you're getting very little, if any, protection. Oh, wow. Yeah. So I always say, do not depend on your makeup for protection. It's great to kind of the icing on the cake, to put it over your sunscreen. Makeups typically, unless you're wearing a specific tinted sunscreen that has all of the broad spectrum qualifications and everything. Okay, so tell me what you do at night to wash.
I use, well, I've never used soap. I use a cream cleanser, and it's generally something that I'll get like at Marshall's, Ross, or TJ Maxx.
So give me an idea of a brand. When you say a cream cleanser,
I've used
meaning-
Elizabeth Arden
Okay.
and just the cream. I don't know.
So you're using a dry skin cleanser.
Yes.
Okay.
But I do use it with I do a washcloth with warm water and I
Okay.
take it off.
And then what do you do after the cleanser?
I put on the Strivect.
Okay. So same moisturizer. Anything that you do after that?
No.
Okay. Anything that you do on an occasional basis, like you ever do a scrub, a mask, anything?
Oh, I've done when I take a bath or in the shower, I'll do exfoliate, like some scrubs, not harsh. I'm not going to be able to tell you the brand. There was a Neutrogena one, I believe.
How often do you do the scrub?
Not very often, maybe once a month.
Okay. Okay. So where do we begin? So what we're talking about here is we're talking about general skin rejuvenation. And I'm going to kind of divide this into two categories. So the first category is what we call extrinsic aging. Now, extrinsic aging is sun exposure, cumulative sun exposure. So even if you're never a sunbather, we all get a lot of cumulative sun exposure. But in particular, if you've been a sunbather outdoors a lot, you get a lot more. And as much as 90 to 95% of what you perceive as inevitable aging, all the things that you see when you look in the mirror, you see fine lines, or you see brown spots, or you see textural changes, and your pores are larger, and the skin just isn't as uniform, and on and on. That is cumulative sun exposure, which most of it happened before the age of 10, and at least 50% is programmed in your skin before the age of 20.
My goodness.
So all that sunbathing you did, it takes 10, 20, 30 years to show up. And that's why so many times people go along for years and years and their skin looks very youthful. And suddenly they wake up one morning and all of a sudden they start seeing these changes. And I've said before, if you've tuned in, I've said that I've heard so many times people will say, well, I looked in the mirror and it was like somebody let the air out of my face. So
that's a good way to put it.
So at any rate, it takes years to show up. And the bad news is that once it starts showing up, it just keeps showing up more and more and more. Now, we can do a lot with that. However, there's also what we call intrinsic aging. So some of the things that you've talked about are intrinsic aging. So for example, around the eye area, you have a fat pad that the eye rests on. And it's held in place by a membrane. There's skin, there's a membrane, and that kind of acts like a girdle, so it keeps everything nicely contoured. As that girdle tends to weaken, and the eye area is one of the areas where the skin is thinner and we tend to kind of show age there first, that fat pad begins to herniate out. And everybody is different. Sometimes it can be simply that there is like a puffiness underneath the eye. Sometimes it extends down to where we see what's called a malar bag line. There's a line that goes like this, and it has to do with the fat sort of being separated, and it's just sort of contour defects and things like that. Okay, now you can do things to kind of soften that, and you can do things topically that sort of help to contour the appearance of the face, but that's cosmetic surgery. And then when you talk about sagging under the chin, well, you also have a fat pad underneath the chin. And there's also a platysma muscle, a large muscle. You know, when people have cosmetic surgery for facelifts, it sounds like it's something like you would pull the whole face up. A facelift is actually the lower part, and it's really the platysma muscle. It's pulling it from here to about here. And so it's contouring and dealing with that lower part. If somebody has issues on the upper part of the face, that's typically like a forehead lift or a mid-face lift or something like that. So what happens is that over time, that fat pad herniates, and as the platysma muscle pulls down, then we start to see cords. You go like this,
right?
And if you go like that, you see the cord sticking out. And also you get what's called necklace lines. And sometimes people say they look like the rungs around a tree. Only you can't tell how old you are by looking at the necklace lines. But there's all kinds of little sort of glandular things that take place, and so the texture of the neck can sometimes get a little rougher. Again, there are things that we can do topically, and actually we have a neck cream. If you go to the website and see the before and after pictures, you really can see significant differences in the appearance of contour and the necklines and all of that. So it can be very, very helpful. But again, this is really cosmetic surgery. And I'm not selling cosmetic surgery, but realistically, what can you really accomplish with skincare? That's what we're talking about. So all of the things like texture and large pores, and if you have a tendency to break out, and dryness, and all those things, oh my gosh, we can do great things with that. And even if people have cosmetic surgery, it doesn't mean that you're going to have good skin. There's nothing that really replaces good skin. When you see somebody that has just really vibrant, healthy looking, glowing skin and it's uniform, it looks so youthful, even if their face isn't necessarily perfectly contoured. So that's kind of what we're going to go for, and I think that's what you want as well.
Yes.
But we can make a difference in some of these things, and so discoloration, all of that. So anyway, so let's talk about how we would kind of address that. Okay? So that comes under the heading of skin rejuvenation. Mm-hmm. Skin rejuvenation I define as being anything from large pores, textural changes. It could be mild to moderate acne. It can be discoloration. It's all of those common skin concerns, those superficial skin concerns that we want to address, because we want the skin to kind of look airbrushed, whether we're wearing foundation or not. And so that's what we're going to address. And we may be able to kind of overlap into the other area. And if we were to talk to her in 4 to 6 weeks or so, she might see a real difference in kind of just the overall appearance of her skin. So when we talk about skin rejuvenation, there's 3 main things that we want to do. Number 1, resurfacing the skin. I can't emphasize that enough. So resurfacing is a way in which we address those superficial imperfections, and typically with a combination of acids. I am not a fan of scrubs, because scrubs, even if they're tiny little granules, what they do is they can create microscopic tears in the skin. Mm-hmm. And those tears can exacerbate acne, but they can exacerbate other kinds of conditions. They create inflammation. Aging is an inflammatory process. Also, hyperpigmentation, acne, those kinds of things are inflammatory processes. So sometimes it can aggravate those conditions. When I talk about resurfacing, we're either using substances that unglue, dissolve and dislodge the glue-like substance or cellular cement between skin cells, lifts off naturally, or we're talking about something like a proteolytic enzyme that can digest dead and diseased tissue without harming normal living tissue. So scrub doesn't know the difference between your dead tissue and your living tissue. So we're going to do a lot of resurfacing. So that's number 1. Number 2, we want to use agents that can actually help with some of the damage that's already taken place. But we also want to prevent some of the future damage. So that's really important. And we want to work with lots of anti-inflammatories, because again, aging is an inflammatory disorder. So those are kind of the 3 areas. And in with that mix is also sun protection. Now, she made a really good point, because only 1/3 of individuals today wear sunscreens every single day the way that they're supposed to, and the numbers are dropping. And why is that? Well, she answered the question, because she doesn't like how they feel.
Or smell.
Or the smell, or if you're really active and it gets in your eyes and it stings. But there are also sunscreens that, because they feel oily, psychologically you think you're going to break out, or sometimes you do break out, because there can be elements in sunscreen that can be aggravating to people that have a tendency to break out. So I understand that. That's why you're going to love the sunscreen. You're going to absolutely love it. Okay. So what I'm going to recommend for you, number 1, is the Skincare Management System for Normal Combo. One thing I haven't mentioned up until now is maybe some of you are familiar with a magazine called New Beauty. As a matter of fact, we've got the New Beauty cover back here in the background. And it's a magazine that focuses on aesthetics. It's a premier magazine that focuses on procedures and skincare. And they give awards every year, and we have won the New Beauty Award for the best system in a doctor's office 8 years in a row. So I'm bragging for a moment. But this has a lot of resurfacing elements in it, a lot of anti-aging elements for the appearance of your skin. And it also has a sunscreen. One of the things that I always say is that we could all be on the same system, but have different concerns. Why is that? Well, as an example, Brenda, one of the products in here is called BioClear. And BioClear is glycolic, salicylic, and azelaic acid. Azelaic acid is sold by prescription for rosacea. It's sold by prescription for acne. It's one of the best pigment lifting agents we've ever seen in terms of brightening the skin. And when you put those three acids together, it is the best I have ever seen for resurfacing and just giving your skin that really nice, refined glow. So you're going to have a glycolic cleanser, a lipid-soluble C. There's some elements in the lipid-soluble C that are going to help with the appearance of definition and contouring, something called DMAE, dimethylaminoethanol. A very, very dramatically effective moisturizer, and the sunscreen. Now, the reason that I said that you were going to really like the sunscreen is because it has an oil capture system in it. And it has virtually unlimited capacity for absorbing oil, but it cannot absorb the actives. It cannot absorb water. So anywhere where you tend to feel a little bit oily, you feel really balanced. Anywhere where you tend to feel dry, you feel really soft and silky. I will even wear it indoors because it makes my skin just feel so balanced and so good.
Wow. That's great.
And I can't say that really about any other sunscreen. So this is something you're really going to like. And the other comment that we get all the time is people think, well, if I put all these products on, aren't I going to feel like I just have so much on my skin? The comment I constantly hear is people feel like they have less than one product on their skin with the system. Now, the other thing that I am going to include, and I'm always dropping something. Now it's the top of my pen. Is I'm going to include a product called Hyla 3D. And let me see, where is that? Here we go. So another element in the aging process is that roughly 50% of what we perceive as aging has to do with loss of volume. Volume is critical. You know, you can give somebody a facelift over and over again and they start to look like a skeleton because that three-dimensional volume, it's fat, but it's also hygroscopic substances, of which the main one is hyaluronic acid. And hyaluronic acid is something that you're born with a lot. When you look at a baby and they look very fat, it's really not just that they're not really fat, but they're full of hyaluronic acid. They're juicy. And then, and when you get into your 20s and 30s, you really start losing hyaluronic acid. So as you lose volume, what happens is that the face shifts downward. And for example, as the cheek pad starts to move downward, you start to see a nasolabial fold. You can also see a separation kind of in the fat underneath the eye, because if you look at a picture of somebody who's really youthful, the distance between here and the top of the cheekbone is usually pretty short. Well, it starts to lengthen, and as it does, kind of the fat herniates, but it herniates in ways that can create some defects, and then with the way the light hits it. And when the cheek pad moves down, this area flattens. You start to see a nasolabial fold. And as the cheek pad flattens, the female face becomes more masculinized in appearance. And she's smiling, but I know inside she's going, oh God, I just want to die.
It sucks.
It gets better. But this should be the highest point of the face. It's known as a youthful triangle. It kind of comes down in a triangle. Actually, a heart-shaped face is the ideal, not oval, but heart.
Okay.
And then as it moves down, this part becomes more narrow, and the actually widest part of the face is down here, because you have herniated fat down here and it's just moved down. So, where was I going with this? I'm getting depressed.
Me too.
Plumping.
Plumping. Hydration, plumping. That's where we're at.
Exactly. Okay. So really, you can drink all the water that you want, and water doesn't really hydrate. They actually did a study at one point with twins, and they had one of the twins drink, lots and lots of water, and the other twin just had a normal diet and drank water when they were thirsty. And they did some pretty sophisticated studies, and the hydration levels were the same.
Interesting.
Because really what gives you hydration and plumpness, some of it has to do with fat, but it's really about how much of these hygroscopic substances you have. Sun exposure lessens them, but also one of the things that has a lot of control on it is estrogen. You have more receptor sites for estrogen in facial skin than anywhere in your body. So that's why injectables are so popular, because injectables can give back volume, and sometimes people can even look like they've had a facelift just by having injectables. So here's where we're getting to Hyla 3D. Okay, up until now, hyaluronic acid, which holds 1 to 10,000 times its weight in water, and it's a great skincare ingredient because instead of just keeping water from evaporating, it actually hydrates the skin. But it's a very large molecule, just sits on the surface, and it has a very short-lived activity. Well, these are very tiny little molecules. They can actually get into the skin. And what most people don't know about hyaluronic acid injectables is it's not the hyaluronic acid that gives you the correction. It does temporarily, but it acts as a framework for collagen. So the collagen forms around the hyaluronic acid, and then that also kind of determines how long it's going to last, is how cross-linked the hyaluronic acid is and how much movement. So areas where you have a lot of movement, like your lips, injectables don't last for very long. They're getting better, but maybe 3 to 6 months. But areas where you can do highly cross-linked hyaluronic acid, which is a little stiffer, like let's say the cheek area, then those injectables, and you don't have much movement there, that could last some people a year, year and a half, maybe a little longer. So this is very different than other hyaluronic acid molecules because it actually gets into the skin. Now, when you're using this day and night, and you're kind of building this sort of platform, then what you start to see is see the appearance of your skin just looking plumper, looking more volumized, looking softer, but it's different than just putting moisturizer on the outside of the skin. And there's a lot of other elements in here that are really, really helpful, but I think this is something that's going to be a terrific addition to your program. Now, the other thing that we're going to put into your program, and this is really going to also be very important, is Marini Luminate. Marini Luminate is extremely anti-aging, but also it's dramatically effective for discoloration, the appearance of discoloration. And they've actually done studies where people look at pictures, and maybe in some pictures individuals have lines and wrinkles, and other pictures maybe they're younger but they have discoloration. Discoloration is judged as making a person look older than lines and wrinkles. And at the age of 35, every single person over the age of 35 will have abnormal pigmentation. There's also something called background pigment. So look at a picture of somebody when they're 20, then look at a picture of when they're 30. Maybe they don't have obvious brown spots, maybe they just have a few little freckles, but there's a difference in the coloration of how bright and how translucent, the clarity of the skin. So this is something that oftentimes we don't really address in a manner that we could. That's why I always say, look at what it is you want to change or improve about your skin, what you really want to address, because it's not just about using a product, oh gee, it's got the latest buzzword in it and there's all kinds of hype, but is it really going to address one of your concerns? So this is Luminate, and this is something that is, again, dramatically effective. We call illuminate because it makes the skin look really illuminated, and it just, the uniformity. Again, if you go to the website, you can see some before and after pictures that are just really stunning. Okay, so the other thing that I'm going to give you, I have to write this down or I'm going to forget. And I said that the Hyla, and then the Luminate, and I'm going to also give you the Luminate eye gel. And Luminate eye gel is something that we actually developed mainly for people with dark circles. However, it has retinol, it has a lot of other things in it, and it just makes the eye area look so much brighter, and it looks more contoured. It just helps to take away some of the fine lines. You didn't point to the crow's feet area, but people always point to the crow's feet area with fine lines, and that's dynamic muscle movement. That's something totally different. That's Botox. So you have two types of lines and wrinkles: sun exposure. The other one is dynamic muscle movement. If you lived in a cave, you make expressions. You get these lines here. You get forehead lines here.
Yes.
What that is actually a crease in the muscle.
Oh, interesting.
So you can soften it. You're not going to get rid of it with something topical.
Right.
Don't listen to all that stuff about, that it's topical Botox and all this, because you'd paralyze your whole face. So anyway.
Okay.
The other thing that I want to provide for you, because this is something that you can do on an occasional basis, or you can do even more frequently, is something called Cleanzyme and Skinzyme. So you said you used a scrub once in a while. Cleanzyme and Skinzyme, that's a proteolytic enzyme. And a proteolytic enzyme is an enzyme that digests dead and diseased tissue without hurting normal living tissue. This is green unripened papaya. It's about 50 to 100 times stronger than ripe papaya. And when you put it on, it does just that. It can't hurt your normal living tissue. It's not going to create inflammation. You can use it even on skin that's been just freshly laser resurfaced like 2 or 3 days out. But when you take it off, your face looks like glass. And over time, it just really helps to enhance that whole look of having skin that looks much more porcelain, much more refined and retexturized. Now, that's something that you can do once a week. You could do it twice a week, 3 times a week. I do it virtually every night. It's one of my favorite products. And I just think it makes a huge difference in giving that just really, really smooth porcelain look. Let me think if there's anything else. I think for right now, there is something for the future that I'm going to recommend for you. And it's called Age Intervention Regeneration Booster. That's a mouthful, so we just call it Booster. And I'm just going to take a moment to talk about Booster. I want you to get adjusted to your program, but we can add that in a little bit later. There's a little bit of a story. I don't want to take up too much time, but there's a little bit of a story that goes along with Booster that I'll tell really quickly. And it goes back years ago. I had a vice president of operations, Nancy, who was with me for over 28 years. She retired recently, and she used to give me medical books for Christmas and for my birthday, because I love medical books, and I have a medical library. And so she gave me this set of books, and it had to do with telomeres and telomerase enzyme. Now, a few years later, the Nobel Scientific Prize was awarded for work by 3 physicians on telomeres and telomerase enzyme as they related to aging and longevity. But back then, it was really just kind of an emerging technology, very exciting field. Telomeres come off the end cap of your DNA, and they look like shoelaces. And then the end of the telomere looks like the end of a shoelace. It's like this like the hard plastic part of your shoelace. And it's full of chromosomal material and DNA, and it helps to keep the telomere stabilized, helps to keep it from premature shortening. Because what happens with telomeres is that as you age over time, they get shorter and shorter, and when they get really short, you die. Anyway, so telomeres literally trump everything. They trump peptides, they trump growth factors, because that's your brain, your muscle mass, your eyesight, everything. And so that's why there's so much research going on in that area. Well, in these books I was reading, there was an obscure study where they soaked skin cells in telomerase enzyme, and they never aged. And I get chills whenever I still think about it. But I'm not suggesting that I'm going to keep your cells from aging. But the point is that there is a lot of research in this area, and that we think that there's tremendous potential for this. And so this was the basis at which Booster was designed. And Booster has actually had a study presented in the the Journal of Drugs and Dermatology, which is a peer-reviewed journal, medical journal, and every single category, whether it was fine lines, whether it was the appearance of pores, elasticity, uniformity, discoloration, every single category, 100%.
Wow.
So that's something that I would like to add in for you in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any questions for me?
Wow. That sounds awesome. I'm just excited. Not really. I mean, I know you know what you're doing.
Well, I'm glad to hear. By the way, Brenda is the sister of Teresa, and Teresa is one of my assistants. So Teresa was kind enough to refer Brenda, her sister. Thank you so much, Teresa. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
She's actually sitting behind the camera.
Thank you, sis.
So I'm actually looking at her.
Thank you.
But at any rate, it's really been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. I've been wanting to meet you.
Well, thank you.
And it's just
And I want you to
so
know
beautiful.
that we're going to continue to work with you. Now, somebody's going to check back with you probably in 4 days.
Okay.
And we're going to check back with you periodically.
Okay.
But even if you tell me, oh, Jan, my skin is the best it's ever been, and you tell me that in a month or two, there's things we can do to get it even better.
Okay.
So we're going to continue to work with you
Thank you.
and modify your program as necessary and add to it. So again, I really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.